Hello, welcome to the live. Is that, yeah, the audio's on. Welcome. So, might look like I'm chilling out, and I am, because I'm musing over the fact, should I become a specialist or a generalist? Well, you might have asked yourself that question too. And the answer is, well, it depends, right? There are kind of arguments for both, because after all, the way society is geared up, or the jobs market, say, is very much geared up towards pushing you down to specialism. All the education system, everything is geared up towards pushing you down to specialism, which is you're going to have this career and you're going to really specialise, and if you're going to do well, you study hard at school, right, and then maybe you go to college or whatever. In the UK we call college that, sometimes it's called sixth form, but it's before university, it's before a degree. So you'll do that maybe, and then usually, sometimes a bit early, but you've got these two paths. You've got, do I want to become more vocational or study further education, right? Whichever way you go, society is trying to push you down a specialism route. So if you're going down a vocational, you might have been pushed down maybe an apprenticeship, right? To go down that route, you get very good and you become a tradesperson, like a plumber or whatever, and you become very good at that. And you do plumbing, you're not doing plumbing and bricklaying, but some people do that, but most times you're trading you have a trade, right? On the study route, you do further education, you study down one path, and then if you're going to go further, you get even more education and and there's levels to it, right? So you've got your first degree, which is like your bachelor's, then you've got a master's, then you've got a doctorate, right? But you can't get a bachelor's degree here and then a master's degree in a completely separate thing and then a doctorate in something else. You have to start down at 11 level again. And that's the same with any skill, anything, even like, I train in jiu-jitsu. You can't, the only way to get good at jiu-jitsu, to black belt, is to train for, 10 plus years and do that. So this is the route. But why are we forced down that route? Have you ever questioned it? Why are we forced to specialise and conform and fit into this kind of narrow specialist route? You're going to be, I don't know, like an architect, or you're going to be an accountant or whatever, right? And you're going to study accountancy, get professionally qualified, and you're just going to be an accountant. That kind of serves the wider economy and society, doesn't it, very well, for us all to be put into these little boxes. But which is best for you? Well, I did a very good video on how long you should stay in your job. And what we're suggesting there is, I think going down one particular niche is good. Well, not niche, but one particular sort of industry is very good. But what you don't want to do is stay in the same job forever, because it depends what your definition of experience is. I don't think experience is doing the same thing for 20 years. I said in my video on how long you should stay in your job, which there's a link down below, you can watch it later. After about 2 years of being in a job, you pretty much learn everything there is to learn about that job. I think it tails off by about 5 years. And then after that, all you're doing is refining what you know about that job. Pretty much. If you were to, I showed this graph where, like, maybe you've got this steep learning curve at the start, which you can expect. Then after about 2 years, it starts to tail off. Then after 5, it kind of plateaus. Yes, it will carry on if you keep in the same job at 20 years. But what you really ought to be doing at that point is sidestepping or jumping right? And the more change you put in, the more new skills you're going to learn. So if you know, every 5 years, if you keep doing this, and that might be, doesn't have to be changing industry or changing role. It could be like changing company. It could be going from employed to self-employed, starting a business, or what I did was create technology for the industry. Still in the industry, but rather than being a designer or a contractor or constructor, I became a software provider for that industry. So I turned my knowledge as a consultant into a software product, right? So there are lots of different ways where you can sidestep, and every time you do that, you gain more knowledge. Now, what's best then? Should you specialise or generalise? Well, I've always been the type of person to go all over the place and try different ideas. I used to think I was like, I always wanted to be a shed scientist. I studied product design initially. I just wanted to be a shed scientist, just come up with inventions, just all sorts of stuff. And the problem with that route is you do end up butterflying and being all over the place. You spread yourself too thin, you've got too many ideas. And I think whether or not you choose to specialise, I think it's more about your focus. The more things you try to focus on at once, the more you spread yourself too thin. So it is possible to do more things, but you're going to spread yourself too thin. It's very difficult to do them very well. And I learned this when I started my business. I was trying to still do a development scheme, like a physical site construction scheme in another business, whilst also building software. And also in my software business, it was also a consultancy, and we was doing tech consulting and some design projects. There was lots of different things going on. And I chose at some point to shut myself out of those other markets, stop doing design projects, and focused on just software. Shut the construction stuff and just focused on just software. And I did that because I felt I was butterflying, and it helped me to be really focused, right? And I guess skill here, rather than worrying about should I specialise, I think the skill here is, rather than specialising in one discipline, what you should be aiming for is one goal or one mission or one. I always think you should only ever work on one primary goal, and maybe a couple of side goals, like, I've got a fitness goal or something like that. But your primary goal should be like whatever, if you're running a business or a career, whatever, right? You need one goal that requires many skills, right? And what I mean by that, if you're going to get hyper specialised, you will do this anyway. If you think the most hyper specialised people end up becoming business owners, right? So even the best accountant will then have an accountancy firm. And just in running that business will force that accountant to have many skills to achieve that one goal. That's going to be, well, they're already good at accountancy. Well, they should be, if they're the best. But they also have to start getting good at marketing, nothing to do with accountancy. They won't teach you in accountancy school, but you'll have to get good at marketing. You'll have to get good at communication. You'll have to get, dealing with people. You'll have to get good at, it might be building management or something like this, right, if you run a building. So what you'll see there is there's many different, it's one goal and many skills. And I think that's the way to go, right? And I did a video, I'll put the first link down below. I did a video called The 7 Mental Models for Success. And what I was trying to do there was to think about the very big picture skills, like almost macro level skills that you can apply to any industry, right? And those 7 mental models, I believe that if you improve and learn, will benefit you all over the place. They'll benefit you in your current career, they'll benefit you in your personal life. And if you have a look at them, there were 3 of them were around communication, right? One is negotiation based and understanding things like the buyer-seller dynamic. You know, if you are negotiating or trying to strike a business deal and you look desperate, you're going to come off worse. Same as if you go for a job interview and you go in on the back foot, desperate for a job, and you seem desperate, you're going to come out worse than if you went in as a strong position. So 3 of these mental models are all about communication. One is like about what I've learned with Scott, which is things like active listening, learning how to make sure the other person is seen, heard and understood. Because no matter what you do in life, you've got to convince other people to work with you and your ideas are good and things like this. So you've always got to convince people of, you know, who you are and what you stand for in order to get any work. So that's a universal skill. Another one was like sales and marketing, right? Understanding sales and marketing, understanding the difference in marketing between paid and organic and things like SEO. I think that is a universal skill. We're in a digital era. Doesn't matter what you do, you need to learn them things. Another one was like a way of setting and achieving your goals and being productive. Like I said, my 3-step system, which is create an identity, set some goals and do 3 small things a day working towards your goals. That works for anything, whether it's your fitness, your business, your relationships, absolutely everything. So you need a system of working, right? And then there's some other things as well, like, you know, managing finances and things like that. They're general skills that no matter what you do, you're going to use the approach rather than worrying about specialising. It's one goal that requires many skills. Now, you don't want too many. I came up with 7, and I think there was a bonus 8. I came up with 7. You don't want too many. You want to get good at a few things. And the other thing is, you don't need to be an expert in all these areas. Like take marketing. If you're not naturally good at marketing, you just need someone who's very good at marketing to work with you. But I always think that you should have some knowledge, right, of all of those, let's call them big ideas, or some knowledge of every discipline required to become very functional, so that you, if your life depended on it, you could create one mission and you could pretty much do everything yourself should you have to. And then you want to, as you grow and build a team, you want to add people in that are even better than you at each of these sort of various areas. And, you know, so you might get a salesperson who's better at converting sales. You might get a marketing person who's better at the technical side and, you know, the organic and paid and things like this. Then you might get an accountant who's good at finances. But you, as an individual, should have general awareness of all these skills. It's got a few comments. I think let's have a look here, yeah. Get a cup of tea, yeah, go and get a cuppa, yeah. What we're talking about, should you become a generalist or a specialist? Small common sense than anything. Yep, correct. Next one. I think maybe you should talk to us as well. Just think you're all about yourself. Oh, right, yeah, I'll bear that in mind, yeah. I'm just trying to give examples, right, of my own situation. I think it depends on you need to specialise if you want to start, yeah, 100%. So you need to specialise when you start out. And that is the point. I think the route is that specialism. But if you notice, the best people in any industry end up becoming business owners. And at the point you become a business owner, that's when you find out you need to learn about taxes and all this stuff that when you were in earlier in your career, like if you're working for someone else, when you're especially if you're in a big corporation as well, because if you work for a small company, I work for a smaller construction company, and what I liked about that job is you did a bit of everything. When you work for a small company, you do a bit of everything. When you work for a very big corporate, you're literally put in a box and you've got one role. And then if you think about it, you don't have to worry about the finances or the invoicing or the taxes. Someone else is doing all that stuff. So But the minute, if you ever started to work for yourself, all of a sudden you've got to learn all them things, and it then hits you, and then that then switches you from being just a specialist, almost like a one-trick pony, not a one-trick pony because you can get very skilled, almost a specialist, to then having to switch from that to having one goal with a primary discipline, but you need all these other skills. And it reminds me, like, I've got this book out to talk about this. Look how fat that book is, right? It's called A History of Western Architecture. So when I was studying RIBA, for architecture, and one of the exams was basically you had to learn about the whole history of architecture, dating back to flipping the ziggurats, which were like 4000 BC, all the way up to the current day. And one of the most fascinating, I think it's on one of the most fascinating periods is the Renaissance period. And this got me at the time, because you had these guys like who's this now? Brunelleschi, right, who built this like mega dome, right, which is a really famous dome in Florence, right, and it was like no one had ever constructed a shape like that before naturally, and it's a huge dome made out of bricks. And then another person who we all know is Leonardo da Vinci, right, and the Renaissance became known for the polymath, which is people that did many different things. If you think about Leonardo da Vinci, many people see him as a painter. I would say he's more of a sculptor, but he was everything, right? And Brunelleschi too, right? They all painted, they were all sculptors, they were all architects, they all did engineering, they were polymaths, they philosophized, they did all these different things. And I think that was when I was reading about all that was my favourite period, because you had these guys that were like trying their hands at everything, all sorts of different things. And the polymath became a thing, and then after, once we got into, let's call it a bit more industrial revolution, well, there's many years later, hundreds of years later, we became to hyper specialise into careers, and I think that's the thing. What are all these comments now? Look at yourself there by goals and all. Yeah, okay. Right. So that's it really, I would say. What you should do is, you have to specialise initially in the early part of your career, no matter what you do, because that's how we're forced. I do think there are some people, my cousin's one of them, that are lucky enough at a young age to start thinking entrepreneurial at a young age, and how can I create this business, rather than worrying about going down one path or another. I don't think, the problem is we need some money, so we have to conform, and when we're young we have to fall into one of these paths. But I do think that the best possible thing you can do is try to learn a set of mental models that are going to bring you through life. Like I said, the 7 mental models video, that's a good one. They're just 7 that I come up with. I think they're really good. I think all of them are general skills that you can reapply. So whilst you might have to specialise and you might have to study and everything to get a career, you also should be learning almost like the big picture ideas of multiple disciplines, so that you have an overview, at least an overview of, say, how taxes work, how to market, what marketing is, the various skills involved in that, what negotiation is. If you're going to try and make a sale, you need these sales skills, and you've got to understand how to communicate and negotiate. So that's it, really. Oh yeah, look at the comments, yeah. Who's the lady in the window? There isn't a lady in the window, is there? Oh no, I don't think there's a lady in the window. Are you freaking me out? I can't see the lady in the window. She's just in the window. Oh no, don't start. No. Well, maybe, but I can't see a lady in the window. Anyway, that's it really. Interested in your comments on that, by the way. Not the lady in the window, because there isn't a lady in the window. What do you think? Specialise or generalise? I think you could go either. I think you need it all. My opinion, as I said, as you advance and you become more clearer, and this just depends what you want out of life. I think if you become more clear on what you want, then you want to switch from one specialist discipline to one mission that requires many skills to get there. That's what I think. Blue top. Okay. You're having me on now. Thank you very much anyway. I like these comments. Right, I'm going to shoot. Got to get going. All right. Don't forget, like the video and look down in the description. There's one called How Long You Should Stay in Your Job. That's worth looking at. And the 7 mental models video. I think they're both in the description links. All right. Thank you very much. See you all next time.